I'm Mara Webster with In Creative Company, and today I'm thrilled to be talking about the fantastic series, The Sympathizer, with some of the cast. We are joined today by Hoa Xuande, Nguyen Khan, and Duy Nguyen. And Hoa, starting with you, I wanted to start by talking about the way that you've created this character, because I know that it was important to the creative team to have someone who could really bring the charm and intelligence to the captain, but also to have that side that has a little bit more darkness to him. And I was just interested in the journey of really kind of finding these two juxtapositions into who he is.
Yeah. Um, I don't really know how I yeah, it's interesting. Like uh having these descriptions of like a charming and intelligent and all that sort of stuff is, I guess, very flattering. But yeah, it's great that they saw me that way, and I hope I brought that to the role. But I guess for me, like when I approached the captain, it's such a complex character, and um, there's so many obviously layers to the portrayal of this character. It's not just a spy who's playing, his loyalties to two sides. It's really a complex sort of moral dilemma that he faces along his journey throughout this series. And I really wanted to dive deep into what it was that this human being was dealing with at the time. So I really tried to find, stories and accounts of, I guess, civilians and Vietnamese people and their experiences and perspectives during this time of the war, and even the aftermath, coming to as refugees to America. And I found so many accounts on YouTube and the internet, and read articles about these accounts that I guess a lot of the time we never really hear before when we think about the Vietnam War. So if you read some of these accounts and you find them, a lot of these stories will just bring you to tears. And I felt a responsibility when I took on this role of the captain to be able to portray uh, Vietnamese people and their struggles and their trauma, especially during this time, in a very human, deep, and three-dimensional way. So I tried that. For me, I felt like that was the core of the human being that I was playing, and obviously this series is portrayed through the captain's perspective in his lens, but there are so many stories, that play alongside the captain's journey that are just as, funny and hilarious, but also deep and devastating and traumatic as well. That, yeah, I just felt like if I got that right, then his wit and his charm and his intelligence and his, you know, uh, deep felt humanity and his compassion would also bleed through.
Yeah, I love that, and it really does. And Fred, with you, it almost feels like there's kind of two stages of building your character and playing Bond, because we get to meet him at the beginning and see who he is and the life that he's built for himself. And
Yeah.
then, when we saw at the end of episode one that he goes through losing his family and in essence everything that's important to him, that's a very different version of the character that you're then stepping into for the rest of the series. And so how did you create who you wanted him to be at the beginning, and then what it looks like when he loses everything and all of that is stripped away?
The funny thing is we shot a lot of the episodes out of order. So the first 2 weeks of shooting literally was just Bohm and the captain together by themselves, being, depressed, being drunk, and just really like I knew then that I really wanted to lock down his body language and his eyes because I didn't have much dialogues during those scenes. I was just literally the captain taking care of Bohm, and I wanted to be consistent with the rest of the season. So it was actually very nice when we finally got to shoot some happy moments. Towards the end of the shoot, like episode one was towards the end of the production, and it was also the first time that the three of us, Bom, Captain, and Mung, they were together for the first time at the beer garden, in the cafe scene with the little baby. Those were moments that genuinely I had no idea how to play Happy Bom because we've never done it before. And it was just, but the fact that we were all, the three of us together for the first time just made it really easy to emote those moments of joy.
Yeah, that's so interesting that in essence you had to do it completely backwards for the
Yeah, it's a
character.
reverse engineering it in a way, you know?
And Sweet, in coming over to you, there's kind of like two different ways that we're seeing your performance. Again, it's that first episode and who is your character as man, and then
Mhm.
who is he when we're seeing him through the memories and imagination of the captain.
Right.
And when he's writing letters to him and they're having conversations,
Mhm.
those aren't happening in real time. And I was interested in how you wanted to approach playing those scenes because they feel both kind of like a memory and imagination, and at the same
Right.
time, they feel so emotionally real.
Right. It is tricky. It's like I won't lie, it's one of the most tricky part of the character. So it's through the captain perspective. So if the version of Mun in his imagination is that the real Mun, or is it what the captain think, or if that what the captain want to hear from his friend Mun. And I just started reading the script over and over and start questioning, okay, what is this moment about? You know, what exactly is the captain trying to say? And also, but also keep the physical aspect of the character because you still want everyone to recognize that it is Mun, you know, as the captain imagining him. So it is really, really tricky. And you know, lots of conversation with the showrunner and Don McKellar and the directors to really figure out what this moment really is.
Yeah, no, you've done it really beautifully, and I love that approach. And to that point, Hua, I wanted to talk about playing a character who's also the narrator of a story. But to Zui's point, how truthful and honest is he as a narrator versus, in essence, it's his version of events and the way that he's
Yeah,
experienced it, but he's also telling it to someone else. And so, is there an
yeah,
intention in the way that he's recalling things? And I was
yeah,
just really interested in how you worked with the scripts and the idea of his perspective and the way that it constantly changes. He'll like rewind and
yeah.
shift perspective in moments.
Yeah, that's actually quite interesting, because it is a retelling. It is really a confession piece, for people who have read the book. And, as you watch, you'll realize that that's really what this piece is, this story is. It's his confession. And in confessing, it's evident that the rewinds are rewrites and that he's having to finesse, he's having to almost propagate certain areas of his retelling, whether they're lies or not, whether he's trying to convince himself. And I think that really in itself demonstrates the conflict within his own conscience, whether he believes in certain moments or whether he believes he was doing the right things or not. And I think the way that director Park is able to illustrate that, through sort of just the visual language of, flashbacking and flash forwarding in certain moments, really shows you the chaotic nature of the conscience of the captain in various moments where he's trying to either keep up the lie or convince himself of the truth. Um, yeah, and that's essentially what the series is about. It's a guy who's trying to figure out his identity. He's trying to figure out what his beliefs are, where his ideologies lie, where his loyalties lie, and his friendships. And he's just rewinding and going back and forth to try and figure out the essence of each of these retellings and trying to find each of these moments whether they are true to these beliefs that he's sort of retold to himself over and over and over again.
Yeah, absolutely. And Fred, also in terms of just the narrative and the friendship that exists between your character and the captain, there's that moment where in essence they both reveal their secrets to each other. And I feel like for your character, that kind of gave him a little bit of life again. It gave him like a little bit of connection.
Yeah.
Going back to what you were saying about having to use your eyes a lot, all of a sudden there's a little bit more dialogue to the character because he's kind of essentially a mentor in that moment as well.
Yeah,
And so how did that shift and change the character a little bit for you?
it was fun. It was one of the first times where we got to actually conversate on a more, and the situation is like it's kind of comedic in a way. You these two guys are just planning to do something terrible, but in a way it's like kind of a friend teaching someone else how to fish. Like it's kind of very matter of fact. It's very just natural. Like he views these things as just normal for him, but for the captain, it's just like the most non-normal thing. Like, how am I gonna do this? So it was a lot of fun. It was the script is really well written for those scenes as well, and the real challenge really was, and I think we shot this quite early on. A lot of the scenes, um, our Vietnamese at that time, like we were kind of testing it out as well, trying to find the voice of these characters, and getting notes from director Park. And director Park is somehow able to detect when Vietnamese language is not working or the line is not working, even though he speaks Korean, And so I don't know how he does it, but it was one of the first days really where it's like, okay, we did something really, like we did a really tough scene because it's a lot of long dialogues during those scenes.
I love that, and for both of you, Fred and Hoa, I wanted to just ask about filming that scene and filming that sequence where in essence they're committing a kill together, because it's really cool. It says so much about their friendship and their dynamic. And also even just in that moment as audience members, you kind of get a sense of how comfortable or uncomfortable, how experienced or inexperienced are they at different moments. And then they also kind of really show up for each other. And so how did you set about finding all the different facets that were important in that sequence?
I think. I'm sorry, you go.
No, please go. Yeah, please go.
I think it's an interesting point that you bring up where they're there for each other. If someone watches the whole season and they really pay attention to every one of the Blood Brothers decisions and actions, every one of those is the intention is made with how it affects the other brothers. Bohm is just trying to protect the captain and trying to make sure that everything goes well for him. He's just trying to make sure that, because at this point he's basically lost everything else in his life, and he just wants to. If it was up to him, he would just give up and die. But the fact that his brother is still there is the one anchor that he has. So he's gonna see this through. Plus, he has a really weird, wholesome love of violence. So for him, this is a thing where it's okay. This is finally something exciting. And I remember on one of those days, I don't know how it came to be. I think either I was chewing gum between takes and director Park saw it, or director Park thought of this idea, because I do tend to chew gum a lot. He decided, okay, whenever Bohm gets excited about violence, he's gonna start chewing gum. So like during those car stakeout scenes, I'm always just chewing gum and having to speak Vietnamese at the same time. It was really challenging.
Yeah, that's like, I guess I was just gonna add to what Fred was saying, but it's funny because like obviously we see a lot of the captain's relationship and Bourne's relationship together in this show. But obviously the missing piece in this brotherhood is Mung, who we most of the time see through the captain's imagination, until obviously the very end. That's a potential spoiler, maybe not. But I guess the thing is, it's funny because all three of our characters have something to hide, whether overtly or covertly. And it's funny because we do so because we're trying to almost save this very innocent relationship that we've built with each other from the age of 14 as children, that we've bonded in a certain way, that we're blood brothers, and we're constantly trying to chase that that loss of the innocence that this conflict has sort of perpetuated on us. And everything that we do and say has, like Fred said, has a reflection on how we can potentially save our relationship and bring it back to the way we all want it to be. But obviously, throughout the progression of the story, there are just things that we have to do and commit to each other that almost separates us all in our own different directions.
I love that. And Zui, in coming back to you and the scenes that you were talking about before, where your character, in essence is there in conversation. I love the fact that he's almost a conscience for
Mhm.
him, but sometimes he's telling him the things that he needs to hear, and sometimes he's telling him the things that he has to hear, but he doesn't want to say to himself. And I
Mm.
thought that was a really beautiful juxtaposition between those two spaces, that he kind of conjures up the idea when he needs him to like instill confidence or tell him that he has to do something he doesn't want to. And so what was the experience of getting to play those two different sides?
Um, that's a really good question. The big part about it is keeping the consistency of the character, you know. Somehow you have to dig so deep to find the essence of what is Mutton and what is the captain version of Mutton. What does he think about when he think about Mutton? So it is hard. It's challenging. I won't, lie about it. But the interesting thing is that I filmed all of the imagination scenes in one day.
Yeah.
That was the craziest day ever with all three directors, all three in one day. It was, so that helps a little bit because, I have the character and now even though he's different between moments, he's still the same, in essence. Um, and then also, you have to I want to leave it up to the audience a little bit. Give each one of the scenes a little bit of a, they same character, but a little bit different, and that leave it up to the audience to interpret what that scene's supposed to mean. And I think that's the exciting part about playing the imaginary version of Mutton and how that, play into the bigger theme of the show and how that speak to the psyche of the character, of the main character, the captain.
Yeah, it feels like I could go back and rewatch all of those scenes and get
Yep.
something different each time, which I
Mhm.
love. And Hua was bringing up such a great point earlier about all three of your characters are hiding part of themselves and they're all keeping secrets throughout the show. And so for all three of you, I was just wanted to kind of ask a little bit about the experience of playing these characters, but then also finding what are they keeping hidden? What do they want to make sure not to reveal? And then even, whenever someone's concealing part of themselves, there's always moments where things come to the surface or they show an emotion that they don't mean to as well. And so what were some of the complexities of trying to find that scene by scene throughout the show?
Mm.
Um, I guess, the captain's, you know, I guess being a spy, the captain's journey in veiling and revealing is, quite evident in that respect. But I guess in terms of even, the brothers, once you work out the dynamic, you've got two brothers who are obviously communists, and then you've got the other brother, Bong, who is obviously a soldier of the South, of the Republic. And so hiding that is, paramount. Hiding that is obviously crucial to all of their survivals. But I guess on a deeper level, I mean, it really comes down to saving. I guess it's about um, hiding yourself because of trust and because of friendship, or like out of loyalty, because not only are we trying to survive the war, but we're trying to save a piece of ourselves that has any feeling of love or any feeling of home or any feeling of humanity within ourselves. And you know that's what we're really trying to save. And so we have to hide these things to try, in order to not lose the very things that make these three human beings, I guess, human.
Hmm.
Uh, yeah.
And yeah, and filming it was really interesting. I don't know if you remember, Fred. You remember the beer garden scenes, and then director Park just come in and be like, "Okay, give me a glance between just the two of you while
Yeah.
he is saying something."
Yeah.
So the mask is always there for all the character, but you can sometimes see a little crack here and there. You
Mm.
know, especially in the beer garden scene, you can see the look between Mutton and the captain, and what does it mean? I'll leave it up to the audience.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of that throughout the scene when they're together, and it makes me feel like inside they always wanted to tell each other the truth.
Yeah.
because the circumstances, because it's a life or death situation. They cannot, and do so. And that's a tragic part of the story, and how they overcome that. So the performances between the three of us is very subtle. And also director Parks and director Mark and director Fernando direction about, how do you go about hiding a secret, you know.
But I just want to add to that very quickly. Sorry, Fred. But
No,
like,
it's okay.
almost like that friendship, like our friendship, the three of us, it's almost like a metaphor for the wider conflict. There were so many competing and opposing sides that were being split by ideology and beliefs, but recognizing that within ourselves that there are three boys who are friends that they're trying to return to that balance and that peace. And in order to do so, that they had to hide themselves because they understood that, in revealing who they were, that they would be split apart as the war did for so many people.
Yeah. I mean, and for me, in my case, I'm I'm the one people are hiding things from for the most part.
Yeah, true.
I'm just like going about, not knowing any of these secrets, but on a deep level, where for what I chose to do, and I didn't really reveal this to anyone, really, is um, Bohm, to a certain degree, is really just hoping and waiting for death. He doesn't really see anything to live for. The only thing really is his blood brothers, and in his mind, he already lost Mang to the communists. So the only one left is the captain, and once the captain's okay, Bohm could be just okay dying. Which is why when he finds death in many different ways, he kind of feels whole again. And the only also another thing that I chose, like I found very interesting as well, is that they all clearly love each other so much. I think it's just really hard for someone like Bohm to express his love to them. So there's a lot of teasing and a lot of like roasting, but it's clear that it's love. And I think it's only until they go through everything that they've been through that Bohm is able to acknowledge the fact that you guys, you're my friend, and I don't, that you don't need to say anything to me other than that. And I thought that was really cool.
And I can add to that, actually, in of itself, Bone and his yearning for death, how horrible that sound, in of itself is a secret, because he never actually told the captain that's what he
Exactly.
wanted,
And
you
actually, the
know.
only time he reveals it is when they get captured. So
Yeah.
Yeah, which is a spoiler, and we don't
yeah,
talk about that.
We don't
that's
talk.
fine.
I mean, I also love that description of how they express love to each other. It's not saying I love you, but it's so clear that there's such a deep-seated love and respect that all three of them have with each other in this friendship that literally transcends into seeing each other as family, as brothers.
Yeah.
And so off the back of what Fred was describing for the other two of you, what did you want that expression of love to look like for your characters in a way where they're not saying it, but it's always there?
Oh, oh, that's a really good question. Oh my God, I love it. For Mun is very different. Mun, he is, uh, because he's a older brother. He acted like an older brother for Bone and the captain. As an older brother, he has a responsibility of taking care of them, and showing emotion is part of weakness.
Mm.
And he, in absolute no circumstance, he can show emotion. So that is a very, very big struggle. You can see it in episode one when he finally tell the captain that you need to go, you leave, that's your mission, and that was really hard for him to say. And you can clearly see, how struggling he was, saying that without, and he tried to hide it in, and then you can see it a little bit. You can see the crack when the captain looked away. Um, and that's how I try to approach those the love aspect of the showing the love as an older brother is very complex, and you can't give too much and you can't give too little neither.
But I mean, especially with the captain, there's obviously being a spy, he does all his spy stuff and, sabotaging and, revealing and that all that sort of stuff. But if you really think about it more specifically, the act of not wanting to get on the plane to escape Vietnam at the end of the first season, but then having to do it because of the mission that Matt Mung gives him. He obviously consequently does, but if you sort of think deeper about that moment, it's just like, who is he really doing it for? Is he doing it for country, for the love, for the mission, or is he really doing it to save his brother, Borm? And at the end of the day, there's so many factors to that. But as you watch the show, you realize that all these things that these brothers do, and especially for the captain, he does it in order to save either Borm from the traumatic events at the end of episode 1, losing his family, or he does it in order to fulfill the mission that Mung gives him in order to help Mung progress through the chain of command that he believes Mung is living. Yeah, and that that all these little things that aren't overtly and bluntly expressed are done through uh, uh, through different ways of, I guess, either missions or sabotage or revealing certain clues.
Yeah, it's so wonderful. And also kind of going back to talking about Park Chan-wook as a director, because he's the co-showrunner, but also directed the first 3 episodes of the series. I loved that description of, even when something was in Vietnamese, that he has such an instinct for if something feels truthful and authentic for characters and story in the moment. And so I was interested in how he kind of worked with you, given that he has that just intrinsic sensibility and nature about him, in really making sure that you were always finding that in every scene throughout the show.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like he's very intuitive. He understands the cinematic language like no one else. He has he gives notes through a translator, but his notes are so intentional and so precise every time. I feel like he he knows, he's been thinking about these shots for months, and he knows how to guide us to get what he needs. But something about him, he understands rhythm, timing, body language. Sometimes the body language stuff is not natural. Like sometimes he'll tell me, sleep in this really weird position in the background, and then, but because it's director Park, it's going to look amazing. So you don't really question it. Any other director, you'd be like, I don't know what this is going to look like. I don't feel comfortable doing this, but director Park, just take the wheel, So for me, it was really liberating as an actor, because I get to just focus on the work and not have to worry about how it's going to turn up.
Yeah. And like, do you remember, if we're talking about even episode 3, do you remember, Fred, like me and you sitting in the car about to do the assassination of the major, and even having that little monologue between ourselves, dialogue between ourselves, in how you're kind of guiding me through how we're going to do this assassination, and I'm getting frustrated. But that was something that director Park found in the moment, that he, crafted sort of our characters in that moment and how we needed to be, because he saw the bigger relationship between us, that he needed to have Borm as a mentor, and the captain stepping up to the plate in this moment as, a bit as sort of an apprentice, so to speak. And it's funny saying apprentice and assassination at the same time. But like, that's something that director Park intuitively found in the moment, that in order to express this relationship in this way, Borm's needing to care for and save and prepare the captain for this moment. And the captain relying on and listening to, against his own frustrations, in order to carry out this mission of assassinating the major. That was his take and intuition in getting us to portray that scene in that way.
Yeah, and he's very precise with his direction. Like Fred said, he's so precise. And that's what I appreciate most about director Park direction while shooting it, actually, because he never gives you a note like, oh, your character is thinking this or character is thinking that. No, that's he leave it up to the actor that he hired. He just tell you what to do physically. Like in this moment, you're gonna touch your hair, but how do you justify that for your character is up to you. And by me trying to justify how do I touch my hair in this moment, realize what my character is thinking in that moment for him to touch his hair. You know, it's so cool that like that is character work right there on set, you know, while taking direction.
Yeah.
It he never said anything about my character, and I figured out that out by my on my own through his direction, which is brilliant. And every single moment is all planned out. You know, sometimes we do something that is not like I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm gonna do it, and then you see it on the screen. And it's actually a very sick like transition between the scenes. So yeah, it's really rare to have a director where you can trust your whole heart that he's gonna take you where you need it to be.
Well, I'm so appreciative of all three of you sharing so much detail about your characters and the show. It's really, really phenomenal. I finished the end of it and already kind of went back and started rewatching some of the early scenes and how
Thank
it came
you.
together.
Thank you.
Awesome.
And I think it's one of those shows that is really going to hold up with like multiple watches for people over
Yeah.
time. Congratulations and thank you so much again.
Thank you so
Thank you
much.
so much for your wonderful question. Those are really good questions.
Yeah, those are